Hello everyone and welcome to my channel YNR Trends. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Is she alive? Noah kicked open the door and burst in, the sound splintering through the room like a gunshot as his breath caught in his throat and his eyes flew straight to the sight of Allie collapsed beside the couch and Sienna clutching her, both women wailing in raw, animal grief that seemed to suck the oxygen from the air. Allie's face streaked with tears and blood she didn't seem to notice as she shook Sienna's shoulders and begged her to wake up while Sienna lay frighteningly still, her skin pale, her lips faintly blue, the rise and fall of her chest so shallow it looked like it might stop at any second. And Noah felt his knees weaken because in that one horrifying instant his mind replayed every unfinished conversation, every argument, every moment he had chosen work or pride or silence over love. And the guilt slammed into him so hard he nearly dropped to the floor as he rushed forward, shouting Sienna's name over and over while Allie sobbed that she wasn't responding, that she had just collapsed, that 1 second she'd been talking and the next she'd been on the ground gasping like the air itself had betrayed her. And Noah dropped beside them, his hands shaking as he pressed his fingers to Sienna's neck searching desperately for a pulse, his voice breaking as he begged her not to do this, not after everything, not when they were finally supposed to be okay. And somewhere in the back of his mind a dark whisper reminded him that, okay, had always been fragile in their world, where secrets festered and lies detonated lives without warning. And as Allie rocked back and forth screaming for help, Noah barked orders into the chaos, telling her to call 911, to stay with him, to stay focused, even as he himself felt the terror clawing up his spine, because the pulse he felt under his fingers was weak, frighteningly weak, and every second felt like an hour as memories collided with the present. The last time Sienna had smiled at him that morning, the way she'd brushed off her headache, the warning signs he'd ignored because denial was easier than fear. And now here she was, lifeless in his arms while Allie cried that this was her fault, that if she hadn't pushed Sienna so hard, if she hadn't confronted her about the secret she'd just discovered, maybe Sienna wouldn't have collapsed. And Noah snapped his head up at that, demanding to know what secret, what Allie was talking about, but Allie just shook her head violently, sobbing that there wasn't time, that none of it mattered if Sienna didn't wake up, and that word, wake up, echoed in Noah's skull like a cruel joke because what if she didn't? What if this was the moment that would change everything? The moment people talked about in hushed tones later, saying this is when it all went wrong, and as sirens wailed faintly in the distance, growing louder with each agonizing second, Noah felt something hot slide down his cheek and realized he was crying too, not caring, not stopping, whispering apologies into Sienna's hair, promising her things he didn't even know how to keep, swearing he would fix everything if she just opened her eyes. And Allie suddenly screamed that she could feel blood, that there was blood on Sienna's shirt, and Noah's heart lurched as he looked down and saw the dark stain spreading, the horrifying confirmation that whatever was happening wasn't just a fainting spell, wasn't something simple, and his mind raced through possibilities, an aneurysm, poisoning, a hidden illness, or something far more sinister. Because in their lives nothing ever happened by accident. And then Sienna's body jerked slightly, just enough to spark a surge of wild hope as Noah leaned closer, calling her name again, his voice cracking when her eyelids fluttered but didn't open, and Allie clutched his arm screaming that she moved, as if saying it enough times might make it true. And Noah found himself caught between terror and hope, afraid to breathe too loudly in case he shattered the moment. And then the door burst open again as paramedics rushed in, flooding the room with controlled urgency, pushing Noah and Allie back as they took over, oxygen mask, for rapid questions fired that Noah struggled to answer because his mind felt like it was underwater. And when one of them asked how long she'd been unconscious, Noah froze, realizing he didn't know, realizing time had warped so completely, he couldn't tell seconds from minutes. And as they lifted Sienna onto the stretcher, Noah grabbed her hand, refusing to let go until one of the paramedics gently but firmly told him he had to move. And Allie screamed that she was going with them, that she wasn't leaving Sienna alone, while Noah stood there shaking, watching them wheel the woman he loved out the door, the sirens screaming again as they pulled away. And suddenly the room felt impossibly empty, like all the sound and life had been sucked out of it, leaving behind only wreckage and unanswered questions. And Allie collapsed against the wall, sobbing that she never meant for this to happen, that she only wanted the truth. And Noah turned slowly to her, his eyes blazing with fear and anger and desperation as he demanded again to know what she had confronted Sienna about. Because if there was even the slightest chance that whatever secret Allie was hiding had pushed Sienna over the edge, then that truth mattered now more than ever, and Allie looked at him through tears, shaking so hard she could barely stand, and whispered that Sienna had been keeping something from all of them, something that could destroy lives, something that explained the headaches, the fear, the sudden collapse, and Noah felt the ground shift beneath his feet because he realized with sickening clarity that Sienna hadn't just been hiding a secret, she'd been running from it, and now as the hospital doors closed behind the ambulance carrying her away, Noah was left standing in the aftermath, haunted by the image of her motionless body, the echo of Allie's screams, and the terrifying question still ringing unanswered in his mind, a question that would follow him all the way to the hospital and beyond, into whatever nightmare waited on the other side of the truth. Was she alive, and if she was, what would waking up cost them all? The hospital lights were brutally bright, humming overhead like they were mocking him, and Noah paced the length of the waiting room with blood still drying on his hands, refusing to wash it off because it was proof she had been real, that she had been here, while Allie sat curled into herself in a plastic chair, her sobs reduced to quiet, broken sounds that somehow felt worse than screaming, and every time the automatic door slid open Noah's heart jumped into his throat, convinced it would be a doctor walking toward them with that look people get when they're about to change someone's life forever. And when one finally did approach, clipboard in hand, face unreadable, Noah barely heard the words at first, "She's alive, for now, critical condition," because relief and terror crashed into him at the same time so violently he had to grab the edge of the counter to stay standing, and Allie gasped, covering her mouth, whispering thank God over and over like a prayer she was afraid might expire if she stopped saying it. But the doctor wasn't done, explaining that Sienna had suffered massive internal bleeding, that it appeared sudden but not unexplained, that there were signs this had been building for weeks, maybe months, and Noah felt anger ignite beneath the fear because weeks meant warning signs, weeks meant secrets, weeks meant Sienna had been carrying something alone while smiling at him and telling him she was fine, and when the doctor said surgery was already underway, that the next few hours would determine everything, Noah nodded numbly, watching the man walk away and realizing he didn't know how to exist in a world where everything depended on hours he couldn't control, and that was when he rounded on Allie, his voice low and shaking as he demanded the truth right now, because whatever Sienna had been hiding had nearly killed her, and Allie burst into tears again, shaking her head, insisting she never wanted it to come out like this, that she thought Sienna would finally admit it, finally get help, and Noah snapped that help was exactly what she hadn't gotten. So Allie owed him the truth, and after a long, agonizing pause Allie whispered that Sienna had been diagnosed months ago, that she'd been told there was something growing inside her, something dangerous, something that required immediate treatment, but Sienna had refused, terrified of what it would mean, terrified of becoming weak, terrified of losing control, and Noah felt like he'd been punched because the room tilted, memories suddenly recontextualized, missed appointments, unexplained painkillers, the way Sienna flinched when he touched her side, and Allie confessed that Sienna had sworn her to secrecy, that she believed she could handle it on her own, that she just needed time, and Noah laughed then, a harsh, broken sound that startled even him, because time was exactly what she didn't have, and the realization that love hadn't been enough to make her trust him hollowed him out from the inside, and as hours dragged on the waiting room filled with ghosts, family members arriving, whispers spreading, worried looks exchanged, and Noah answered the same question over and over, any news, until the words lost meaning, and when the surgeon finally emerged, exhaustion etched into every line of her face, Noah stepped forward on instinct, his heart pounding so loudly he was sure everyone could hear it, and when she said the surgery was complicated, that they'd stopped the bleeding but there were risks, long-term consequences, decisions that would need to be made, Noah nodded through it all until the one sentence that mattered landed like a thunderclap. She's stable, but she hasn't woken up yet, and suddenly hope felt dangerous, like something that could betray him if he held it too tightly, and when they were finally allowed into the ICU Noah stood at Sienna's bedside, watching the machines breathe for her, hating every wire, every beep because none of it was her, and he took her hand, warm but frighteningly still, and whispered that she didn't get to decide this alone anymore, that she didn't get to leave him without a fight, and for a moment nothing happened, and then her fingers twitched just barely, enough to make his breath hitch, enough to make Allie gasp, and Sienna's eyelids fluttered again, her brow creasing as if she were fighting her way back from somewhere dark, and Noah leaned closer, tears streaming freely now, begging her to stay, promising her they'd face whatever came next together, even as a new fear settled deep in his chest, because if Sienna survived, And God help him, he needed her to. Nothing would ever be the same, not after the lies, not after the diagnosis, not after the truth waiting like a ticking bomb, ready to explode the moment she finally opened her eyes. The hours bled into one another until time stopped making sense, until the waiting room felt like a suspended universe where hope and dread coexisted in equal measure, and Noah never left Sienna's side once they were allowed back in, watching every flicker on the monitors like it was a coded message meant only for him, memorizing the sound of her breathing because he was terrified it might disappear if he didn't, while Allie hovered near the door, racked with guilt, flinching every time Sienna stirred as if afraid she'd open her eyes and look straight at her. And when Sienna finally did wake, not all at once, not dramatically, but slowly, painfully, as if consciousness itself were a battle, Noah felt his chest seize because her eyes were glassy with confusion and fear, and when she tried to speak only a rasp came out, tears sliding silently down her temples as she realized where she was, what had happened, and Noah immediately leaned in, telling her she was safe, that she'd made it, that she scared the hell out of him, his voice breaking on the last word, and Sienna's gaze shifted past him to Allie, lingering there just a second too long, heavy with unspoken things, before she closed her eyes again like the weight of it all was already too much, and the doctor returned then, calm but unflinching, explaining that Sienna's condition was severe, that treatment could no longer be delayed, that choices would have to be made immediately, choices that carried risks no one in that room was ready to hear, and Noah felt Sienna's hand tighten weakly around his as if she already knew, as if this moment had been haunting her for months, and when the doctor asked if she understood, Sienna barely nodded, tears spilling freely now as she whispered that she was sorry, that she thought she had more time, and Noah shook his head fiercely, telling her none of that mattered, that she wasn't allowed to apologize for surviving, but even as he said it he could feel the cracks forming beneath them because survival came with consequences, and secrets didn't stay buried forever, and when the doctor left again Allie finally broke, collapsing into sobs and confessing everything she'd kept inside, admitting she was afraid Sienna would choose silence over life, and Sienna opened her eyes once more, looking at her sister with a mixture of love and devastation before whispering that she had been afraid of becoming someone everyone pitied, someone broken, someone who needed saving. And Noah realized with a crushing clarity that Sienna's greatest fear had never been dying, it had been losing herself, and as the machines continued their steady rhythm around them, Noah pressed his forehead to hers and promised her that whatever came next, whatever treatment demanded, whatever truths were exposed, he would stay, even though deep down he knew that promise would be tested in ways none of them could yet imagine, because outside that hospital room whispers were already starting, questions were already being asked, and the fragile calm holding them together was nothing more than the quiet before the next storm, one that would force every lie into the light and ask a final brutal question none of them were ready to answer. Can love survive the truth when the truth nearly kills you?